I was very conscious and very mindful of buying textiles that would touch my infant skin that were safer for her. But again, there was this disconnect, and I wasn't thinking about the fact that everything that I wear also touches her because I'm carrying her, because what I wear goes on my skin, and I was breastfeeding, and so any type of fabric that would be on a bra or a t-shirt that I would wear, she would also be exposed to. So it's all connected, it's all interconnected. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Well for Culture podcast. This is your host, Chelsea Luger. If you don't know me, I am a Lakota and Anishinaabe wellness advocate and writer and author from the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa and the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. I was born and raised in North Dakota, but I am coming to you from my home in Mesa, Arizona. If you've been a longtime listener of the podcast, you'll know that my husband Thosh and I are typically co-hosts, but over the next few months, we are experimenting with individual episodes so that we can explore wellness topics that are personal to each of us. So let's get into it. So today we're going to be talking about something that I've been kind of excited to delve into for a long time, and that is toxins in activewear. Now, a few things before I get going. It's not just activewear that toxins are found in. Toxins are everywhere in our environment, and they're honestly unavoidable at this point. Forever chemicals, PFAS, are now present in the blood of nearly all Americans, including newborn babies. And that's because they are found in so many different types of products. The reason I want to specifically focus on activewear today and textiles is because I think it's an area that's underexplored, and I think it's something that we haven't had much exposure to yet as far as discussing this topic in the wellness world. But it is something that is on a lot of people's radar now because so many brands that create activewear are marketing these products to us in such a way that completely avoids discussing their potential harms. We work out because we want to be healthy. We're active and we sweat and we move because we want to improve our health. So just to know that so many of the textiles that are commonly used to create activewear are actively harming us, I think is devastating. And so it's something that I want to discuss today. So like I mentioned, PFAS are forever chemicals that have been around since the 1940s with the introduction of Teflon, which, as we know, is the material that is coated on pans, pots and pans, and cookware to make them non-stick. Now, Teflon pans are still widely sold everywhere, even though their harms and their dangers have been made apparent for some time. And now these PFAS are not only in cookware, but also in dozens and dozens of other products. As I mentioned, activewear and textiles, but also waterproof carpets, other building materials, personal care and cosmetics, bedding, towels. The list goes on and on and on. These forever chemicals are honestly everywhere, and there are side effects. So even in small doses, with exposure to PFAS and other harmful chemicals, people have seen increased risk of cancer, hormone disruption, accelerated puberty, liver damage, thyroid disease, harm to the immune system, which leads to the reduced effectiveness of vaccines, and so on and so forth. We face exposure to these types of chemicals on a daily basis. That's all there is to it. They're in the buildings that we walk into. They're in the carpets that we step on. They're in the waterproof raincoat that we wear as we go on a hike. We can't avoid these entirely, but we can try. We can take certain preventative measures and steps to become more conscious consumers and at least try to avoid these items. Before I keep going, I want to just acknowledge the fact that the word toxin is kind of like nails on a chalkboard to some people because of the fact that it is a highly overused term in wellness lingo. Nonetheless, it is a starting point and it does have some utility. As toxicologists say, the dose is what makes the poison. So not everything, for example, in the food space that has a trace amount of dye in it is necessarily going to lead to these intense ripple of health effects. I want to at least acknowledge that so we can move forward with this conversation in a healthy way. I want to acknowledge that sometimes the risk of exposure to environmental toxins has probably been overblown or has probably been misstated or overstated. So as I mentioned, it's not just in activewear that we find environmental toxins. They're all over the place. So before we jump further into the activewear discussion, I want to say that some of the things that I do to generally on a day-to-day basis avoid toxins is filtering tap water and trying to avoid plastic water bottles. Trying to purchase food that is not in a plastic container and trying not to store food in plastic containers. Being a conscious consumer of pots and pans and anything that touches both food and heat. So replacing nonstick pans with cast iron, and lately I've been avoiding scented everything. Fragrance isn't the only place by any means where toxins get into makeup and lotions and skincare products, but it is one of the big places. And so if I can just make things easier on myself and start by setting some boundaries, it's something that helps me as a consumer. So I kind of go for unscented everything when I'm buying, soap, skincare, especially things that I use now that I'm pregnant and now that I have 2 young daughters. Now, getting into clothing, oh my gosh, I've been wearing spandex, polyester blends of activewear sets for many years, and it kind of makes me cringe to look back and see how blissfully unaware I was of the potential harm that these products cause when I sweat, when my body heats up, and when the residue from these materials leaches into my skin. I just had no idea for so many years how harmful these specifically activewear, performance-oriented textiles could be. And now that I know, I am very interested in spreading awareness. So some of the petroleum-based fabrics that you want to avoid include acrylic, nylon, and polyester. And as I said, when you wear these products, especially while sweating or especially in hot weather, like I live in a very hot climate of Arizona, the toxins from these fabrics can leach into the body through skin absorption. So it's kind of crazy because we specifically seek these products out for their performance enhancement qualities, but what we're finding is that it is specifically during high performance when they can be their most harmful. When you're sweating, you're leaching in the toxic, harmful substances. And so particularly while you're sweating, while you're hot, while you are working out, you want to avoid those types of fabrics. So again, acrylic, nylon, and polyester are some of the worst. And go read the tags of your leggings, your tights, your sports bras right now, and you're going to find that they're probably made out of those materials. So that kind of calls for some change that needs to take place. Something else to note is there's a term called bioaccumulation, and that means that the toxins from these materials that does get into our system accumulates over time, not just in our bodies, but also in our environment. So these are things that don't degrade. These are things that build up over time in our system, making it worse and worse and worse as time goes on of our exposure to these products. So that's why it's important to try to make the changes now as soon as you can. And if you're a parent like me, you want to sort of prevent exposure before it happens. So really focusing on organic, natural fibers and textiles to dress your children in. And if you want to look for more information on these topics, 2 of the places that have been most helpful for me in finding real research and unbiased information has been, one is an organization called Toxic Free Future, which it's completely dedicated to studying this stuff and getting policy changed. And the second is, of course, the Environmental Working Group. So you can find both of their websites just have a ton of information online about not only the harms and the dangers and what to avoid, but also what to potentially replace it with. So what does it look like to avoid these toxins in our activewear and in our clothing? I don't necessarily want to tell everybody to just go and immediately throw out everything you already own that's made of polyester. We've spent a lot of money on these clothes. We have spent a lot of time accumulating these clothes, and that's kind of a big ask. So what I will say is try this. Try shifting your purpose for those items. I actually think that if you're gonna wear the yoga tights that are made of these maximally harmful materials, even though people make fun of us for it, maybe we should be using those tights when we go to do non-active things like running errands, going to the grocery store, or lounging around at home. Maybe wear them when we're not sweating and prioritize replacing them with natural fibers like organic cotton, bamboo, linen, wool even. And yes, there are forms of lightweight, breathable wool and natural fibers. Maybe our priority should be to wear the natural fibers when we are sweating and when we are working out. So just shifting that first and foremost. If you are in a position where you're willing and ready to just get rid of those toxic fabrics though, by all means. And I just went ahead and got rid of a bunch of my activewear sets. I sold them on a resale website. I guess you could sort of look at the morals of that and you could say, why am I selling this to someone when I know that the materials are not ideal? I don't know. I guess I'm just a realist. I think that people are going to continue to purchase and wear these items despite knowing that. And so I think I'll just let people make their own choices when it comes to that. And I'll just do my part in raising awareness where I can. So I guess the next step after sort of repurposing and rethinking our use for these items in our own wardrobes, after we think about potentially getting rid of them, not buying them anymore, replacing them, what do we replace them with? Well, again, the good thing about things like cotton and linen is that those are abundantly available on the market as well, and you probably have some of that in your closet already too. I know I was kind of pleasantly surprised to find that I have a lot of organic cotton t-shirts and underwear and things like that I can use for doing, yoga at home or whatever other kind of workout I am getting into that day. These natural fibers, while they might not be as performance effective or sweat wicking, they do have their qualities. A lot of these fabrics are breathable, hypoallergenic, and gentle on the skin. So look for that. And when you are looking into the natural fabrics, again, to complicate things, and it's kind of frustrating because there are no straightforward ABC answers, you do have to also pay attention to fabric dyes. Were these clothing items dyed with natural dyes, or have they undergone any other type of processing like that involves formaldehyde, detergents, VOCs, chemical fabric softeners? If they have undergone those processes, you're kind of introducing another toxin exposure. Fortunately, a lot of conscious brands nowadays are being much more straightforward and transparent with not only what are their clothing made out of, but what are the processes that have been implemented in their production. There's an organization or an association called Oekotex. I don't know if I'm saying that properly, but it's spelled OEKO-TEX. And it is a global organization that provides sort of standards and measurements on the safety of different textiles and fabrics. And if something is labeled on its tag with Oekotex Standard 100, that means that it has gone through this rigorous testing process. So that's something that you can look out for. And then of course, if you're doing all the work of swapping out toxic fabrics for less toxic or non-toxic fabrics, you want to also then be mindful of how you care for these. So be mindful of what's in your laundry detergent. I'm hearing a lot of bad things about the ingredients that are in dryer sheets, and people are saying you don't need to use dryer sheets anymore. Again, as with personal care products, avoiding fragrances, avoiding dyes. Thankfully, there are alternatives available on the market, and you can start to make a lot more conscious choices when it comes to not only fabric choices, but fabric care. So in my personal journey to replace my polyester fitness gear with better options, another kind of promising and sort of fun fact is that I'm finding there are dozens and dozens of brands out there that are sort of ahead of the game on this. And their whole thing is to create and sell better options for people. And I kind of actually came into awareness about fabric quality, not only through recent years and learning about what's really in our activewear, but back in 2017, when I found out I was pregnant with my first daughter, I was exposed to the whole conversation about organic versus non-organic baby clothes and swaddle blankets and crib sheets and all that kind of stuff. I sort of became aware of it then as a first-time mom, and I was very conscious and very mindful of buying textiles that would touch my infant's skin that were safer for her. But again, there was this disconnect, and I wasn't thinking about the fact that everything that I wear also touches her because I'm carrying her, because what I wear goes on my skin, and I was breastfeeding. And so any type of fabric that would be on a bra or a t-shirt that I would wear, she would also be exposed to. So it's all connected, it's all interconnected. And I think for a while, like I said, I was just blissfully unaware of this. And as sort of frustrating and daunting it is to find out the truth about how present these fabrics are and the toxins are in our environment and in the clothes that are so heavily marketed to us today, even within the wellness industry. It's frustrating, but it's also revelatory. It's like, okay, at least I know now so that I can make better choices. And I'm trying really hard to do so. Now, another thing I want to be mindful of is don't simply get rid of one brand and replace it with a brand that has been greenwashed. So I mentioned I'm very excited about all the brands that are out there now and the companies that are really sort of seem to be taking the lead on this non-toxic fabric stuff. But I also am skeptical. I'm cautiously optimistic. There's something called greenwashing, where a company will present itself with the image of being better for the environment or better for your health, but really it's just an image, it's just clever marketing. And so again, go beyond what you're seeing in the advertisement. Really read the tags, really read the websites. It becomes pretty clear pretty quickly which of these brands are sort of just marketing themselves in a certain way and which ones are actually providing the transparency and taking the steps to make better products for consumers who are wellness conscious. It's a lot to think about, but in my mind, it's worth overthinking. And so I wanted to share that over the next weeks and months, I will be trying and testing and sort of wear testing, wash testing, trying on and sharing different activewear that I am sourcing from places that I think are doing a better job of leading the way in prioritizing non-toxic textiles. I think that it is possible to be performance-based and performance-oriented without necessarily having to sacrifice the health of our hormones, the health of our immune system, and exposure to things that could cause serious illness like cancer. So yeah, stay on the lookout for some try-on videos and some wear tests of activewear brands that I will be trying that will be totally new to me. It's kind of good timing for me because I am pregnant. I'm in my second trimester. A lot of my standard activewear that I was trying to get rid of wasn't really fitting anymore anyway, or wasn't fitting properly. And so it's just kind of a good time for me to switch things out regardless. And remember too, for folks out there, natural fabrics, natural fibers, natural textiles are an Indigenous tradition as old as time. And it is so inspiring for me to think about the old ways of clothing and regalia and adorning ourselves that have always been in line with the earth, in line with the health of our bodies. This is nothing new to our communities, but it is something that we have to get back to. And so something that I'm doing at the end of each episode is kind of reading a quote from my massive collection of books that I have. I always find these little nuggets of wellness information that I want to share, and I don't always have the right place for it. So I figure the end of the podcast is always a good time. So here's a little nugget of wellness knowledge that comes from the late Lakota Sioux author Luther Standing Bear, who wrote, "The old people came literally to love the soil. They sat on the ground with the feeling of being close to a mothering power. It was good for the skin to touch the earth, and the old people liked to remove their moccasins and walk with their bare feet on the sacred earth. The soil was soothing, strengthening, cleansing, and healing. Now, why is that relevant with this wellness, activewear, toxin, fabric conversation? I think it's helpful to think about the way that natural items that come from the earth, or even the earth itself, have been sort of talked about in a way that is less comfortable or less performance enhancing or less ideal. But in fact, these are the very things that have provided our people with comfort for thousands of years. There is something good about an organic feeling, about an earthly texture. Maybe it's a little bit more grainy. Maybe the color isn't quite as bright, but there's beauty in it. And so I think returning to older fabrics, natural forms of dressing, things that when we are finished with them can return back to the earth and biodegrade. There is something comforting and loving in that, and I look forward to being a more conscious consumer from now through the future. So thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Well for Culture podcast. We'll be back again soon with more.